Welcome to AkronHipHop.com, where we paint positive images of our people every day. My name is Deborah Calhoun. I teach at Kent State University in the Department of Pan-African Studies. Hey, Hiram, how are you today?
I am pretty fair for a square. What up, Miss Calhoun?
Hey, nothing up but history every day.
Man, I really appreciate you being here, taking the time out of your busy schedule to help elevate and electrify with knowledge the community. Man.
That is great. The opportunity is always a blessing.
Hey, man, for those of you that's watching this, hey, like, share, do what you got to do. The teacher is in the building. Ms. Calhoun, what are we talking about today?
Today, we're going to finish our discussion on this question of a value difference between African-centered and European-centered worldview, or people-centered versus profit-centered understanding and values and action. And remember, we talked about this question of an African-centered analysis being important because if you do not tell your story, someone else will, and they usually will leave out all of the truth and the good parts. So remember, we were talking about a value judgment between the two extreme opposites. And remember, when Europe touched Africa, it already had notions of itself as superior. And after that contact, it also set in its own mind negative aspects of what they thought about African people. Remember, the issue was over the difference in culture and experiences, and they used their experiences and their culture as more important and more dominant over African people. And this is a process that happened globally. It's not just on the continent of Africa, but wherever we found brown and black and Latinx folks, we found that the negative aspect of attitude and idea and perception and expectations came with. So I'm going to refer to my notes a little bit as we kind of go through this list again. And it's a short list. But again, remember, this question of an African-centered worldview is like those glasses, those lenses through which you see your world. And this will help you in analyzing any event, both ancient, distant past, yesterday, or currently today. It will help you with that analysis and understanding. One of the values I want to continue our discussion with is over the question of value and where one finds one value and one's expectation. With the African-centered worldview, the highest value in life is how you relate to other people, how your interconnection is with not only yourself, your people, your community, but migrating out to the nation, the race, the world. That interpersonal relationship is key and it is important. For the European-centered worldview, the value is in the object, in the thing, in possessing the thing. And things we know are temporary. Things come in and out of favor and savor. So a thing is just nothing, an inanimate object. It can give you nothing back, maybe short-term pleasure until you get tired of it. A second value system that is talked about was over this question of how you acquire knowledge. One acquires knowledge in the African-centered worldview through your experience, through that interconnection, that value with other people, that theory and practice in working with other people and learning and growing in terms of that appreciation of knowledge. For the European-centered worldview, their question of knowledge is the paper. If it's not on paper, it don't count. That's why there was a difference, if you remember, when Africans met Europeans and Europeans began to interact with Africans and they came to say, well, you don't have nothing written down. But because for them, for Africans, their word was their bond. If they said they were going to do it, they were going to do it. And this question of keeping that promise transmitted through the generations. Another point is this question of nature and how nature is to be used and how one is to benefit from it. For the African-centered worldview, nature is sacred. The creator is sacred. We know that in Africa, there's no boundaries. There's no artificial signposts that say this belonged to the Yoruba and this belonged to the Ojibwe. There's no difference in who owns it. The idea rather is that in terms of nature and use of resources, that if I'm there, my people are using it. When we move on to the next location, that ground is still open because all nature belongs to the creator in essence. For the European-centered worldview, this question of nature was to be dominate. to be harnessed, to be used for the benefit of man, and used till nothing was left. If we notice, when there are questions of how nature is to be managed and used, the European used it up till it wasn't no more. The African understands that I'm only here as a temporary steward, that my job is to leave it for the next generation to use. That there is no boundaries, there is none. So when Africans under European rule cross certain territories, Europeans got all up, upset about it. Well, you're on our territory where there's no fence, there's no line. But no, there's this fence here that says it's mine. So this difference in how we treat nature and how we are to benefit from nature easily caused a lot of conflicts. One question of one's worth. What makes you significant to your community? For the African-centered worldview, your worth is in what you do for other people. What you do for other people is more important. What you give away is more important. What you share with others is more important. For the European-centered analysis, the profit motive-oriented set of analysis, your worth is based in how much stuff you got. How many clothes, how many cars, how many shoes, how many belts, how many pieces of land, how many houses. You can only live in one at the one time. But the European worldview and model says that your worth is based in the accumulation of stuff. For the African-centered worldview, when one talks about how one treats those who have left this earth, how do you treat death? For the African-centered worldview, death is perceived as just a transition. You leave this plane and you go on to another. I've mentioned, I think in an earlier conversation, that as long as people talk about you, you're still alive. For the European-centered worldview, the profit-centered worldview, your death is the end. And that is to say that time, in relation to one's death and one's existence, for the African-centered worldview, time is cyclical. It rotates, it ebbs, it flows. There's a movement to time. For the European-centered worldview, time is basically linear. You start at A and you end at B. There is nothing afterwards and left from that. There's an idea that this question of relationships and interconnectedness, this idea of consubstantiation, that is, we are all made of the same stuff. We're all basically the same. Now, there are differences. There are differences in body type. There are differences in blood composition. You're A or B, positive, negative, O, whatever. There's really no difference between the human species. We're all basically made of the same. The European-centered worldview, the profit-centered worldview, divided and dichotomized humanity into rankings and ratings. Often we will note without scientific evidence, because you know what? There is no evidence that says we are different. You either got more melanin or less melanin. You either got curly hair or straight hair. You either got blue eyes or brown eyes. You're either tall or you're short. There are some general composition differences between male and female, and that's basically in body mass and weight, if you will, in terms of the size and the texture and density of bone structure. European used this dichotomy and division of the races and the ranking of races to divide people, to put one on top of another, and of course to put them at the top at all occasions. This idea of the African-centered worldview impacted everything. It impacted how Europe related and connected with Africa. One of the things I often say in class is that when Europe and Africa came in contact with each other, one, Europe didn't acknowledge the African reality and thought we were less than. But one thing I do talk about is that this question of how they interacted each other at different stages of their development. For the European, when they touched Africa in the 16th century, they already had a sense of themselves, that is, as nation states, as consolidated states. England, Europe came at Africa as one. Africans, on the other hand, were moving out of the city stage, set and stage of development, moving more towards nation states. They were not there yet. They were on the way to becoming consolidated nations, as evidenced by the cultures of Yoruba, for example, as evidenced by North African empires and city-states, and those also on the east side of the African continent, that is around Great Zimbabwe. They were on the way towards building nation states. And it's like, I think the contact was such that Africa didn't have the technological development that Europe had. Europe came with ships that were already able to transfer or move across the Atlantic Ocean. Africans had done some of that, but did it more on an exploratory piece rather than for an invasion, exploratory, occupation, exploitation, vision, and model. In fact, the first Europeans who touched the African continent, they talked about and marveled at cross-ventilation. They marveled at that way they had aqueducts. They marveled that everybody was rocking silks. They marveled at the fact that we had waterways that were clean, that we had clean systems for water coming into the community, and we had places for the dispelling and the placing of dirty water. That is, you don't cross your filth water with the water you use for consumption. And Europe marveled at that because they wrote about it. Herodotus wrote about the wide streets and the cleanliness, and everybody's rocking silk and everybody is well fed. And we had distribution and organization of our marketing techniques and empires. So Africa had it, but we weren't at the level that Europe was. And Europe definitely took advantage of that by introducing not only just artifacts that they did not, that they wanted to get rid of, but things that served to be negative to our community. So again, these question of these value systems and judgments, this idea of even how knowledge is transferred, made all the difference as to how Europe treated Africa. Africa didn't leave a lot because the tradition was based on the oral, on the mouth to the ear, and from the ear to the mouth to the community. Europeans thought about, well, if it's not on paper, it don't count. Again, if you look through my trash, you see my trash. You don't see my greatness. You just see my trash and you think that's all there ever was. So with that, I'm going to finish this African-centered worldview, and this is a worldview that we will use whether we talk about Egypt, whether we talk about African city-states, whether we talk about in the so-called New World, the contributions of African men and women of color in the New World. We're going to use this analysis as the lens through which we assess, did we have it going on or did we not have it going on? So with that, I want to thank everyone for watching this video today. And remember to like, share, and subscribe. Ring that notification bell. And on Facebook, if you're watching from that venue, share, and share again. My name is Deborah Calhoun. I thank you all for listening. And if you want to follow me, you can follow me on YouTube at Diamond in the Rough. Or you can hit me up on Twitter at History Sister. And remember, history is made every day because every day we make history. Thank you again. And from myself and Brother Hiram, we thank you. Love and peace.